It's going to loop back to the inside. So everything you
Boom! Jesus Christ.
Now that's foot.
He said people should think of their energy as a luxury, something valuable that not everyone has earned the right to receive, since what a person chooses to spend energy on is what truly matters. And he compared it to the atmosphere of Philadelphia where cheesesteaks, pretzels, and tasty cakes all belong, noting that the passion poured into the stadium begins in the parking lot during tailgates, even in places not allowed, with fans blocking off streets and highways, doing things not exactly legal but always managing to pull it off, because that is the spirit of fanfare. And when it came to the food, he insisted there was no debate. It was simply cheese on the cheesesteak, nothing else, alongside a pretzel, a detail that filled him with joy. And then someone reminded the group that there had once been a jail inside their stadium, which he confirmed was true of the old Vet Stadium, explaining that they had moved on since then, but during those years it had been necessary to have it, since fans could cross the line. And he himself had spent 3.5 hours in that cell, reflecting on his actions, promising never to repeat them, and later feeling proud when his picture was eventually taken down from the wall of shame. Because for Philadelphia supporters, it was almost a rite of passage to have their photo on that wall, a sign of having truly lived as a fan. And he described how he once became a real security risk, with an official alert placed on him after he drunkenly attempted to get on the podium during a playoff game, leading security to assign a team just to follow his movements, which he only noticed after realizing the same 5 guards were shadowing him at every turn, and one of them admitted he was under a threat alert just in case, a moment that made him realize he had truly reached peak fan status, joking that other people never had to face such treatment, as some stadiums like Arrowhead offered fans friendliness, even offering them headsets to listen in on the game, while Kansas City fans often welcomed him warmly with plates of food. And yet he still respected Arrowhead, praising the people of Kansas City for their kindness and the noise they created, though he pointed out that Philadelphia was trained for noise, built on noise, and always ready to respond to it, describing how Arrowhead was thunderous with sheer volume. But the Link in Philadelphia had a different style, using noise strategically with targeted heckling, cutting straight to disrespect, refusing to use players' names, calling them only by numbers, shouting obscenities with precision, which made it more personal and disruptive. And he explained that in Philadelphia fans often research players' personal lives, finding details about family struggles and shouting them out to get under the skin of opponents, while Kansas City fans admitted they too sometimes dug deep with pointed jabs, bringing up things like children's school troubles or academic dreams, being dashed, making their heckling more precise though still delivered with a lighter tone. And both sides agreed these were simply different approaches, Philadelphia leaning into harshness and Kansas City leaning into detail. Then one of them shared how he had been mistakenly singled out by Joey Porter during a Jets-Dolphins game, when Porter, in a heated exchange, looked directly at him and shouted, "Not up in here," even though he hadn't said anything, leaving him terrified until someone explained it was just a line from a movie, a moment that made him think he might be attacked. And this story led into more reflections on heckling, with one recalling how opposing fans would target him personally, mocking his small size compared to players, yelling crude comparisons, or shouting at him in front of his kids, forcing him to cover their ears. While another recalled being heckled at the Ryder Cup with someone shouting loudly that his girlfriend was out of his league, a remark that set off roars of laughter and nearly turned the crowd against him. And he admitted some of the attacks felt unprovoked, making him wonder why strangers chose those moments to lash out. But ultimately he accepted it as part of the game, stressing that in Philadelphia fans tried to keep their trash talk verbal and confined to the stands, never crossing the line physically, even as other places had shown fans shoving players like Lamar Jackson recently. And he asked his city to maintain its tradition of vocal but respectful intensity, protecting the spirit of the sport while ensuring the athletes remained safe, reminding them to subscribe right here if they loved hearing raw fan stories. And with that he shifted to the subject of matchups, explaining that as players they rarely looked ahead to future games as rematches, since every season was new, but as fans the story was different, because people absolutely treated big games like Super Bowl rematches. And he gave the example of when his church league team had won a championship and then faced the same opponent early the following season, how that game carried extra weight, proving that even outside the NFL, the feeling of a rematch mattered. While another speaker argued that the NFL was different because every year brought new teams, new lineups, and fresh fingerprints on the season. So technically it was never the same matchup, but admitted that emotions ran high, saying he still wanted another shot at the Eagles, eager for revenge, and joking that the barbecue that week would be Eagle, even bald Eagle, if it were up to him. And at that point they reminded everyone watching to subscribe now before the next big reveal, because more stories were still ahead, and they circled back to describe how fan energy in Philadelphia and Kansas City, while both passionate, reflected entirely different cultures, one rooted in chaos, intimidation, and sharp insults, the other in friendliness, precision, and food-filled community. And they laughed about how each side still found ways to dig deep, whether it was shouting about grades or fathers, or mocking someone's size. But at the end of the day, it was all driven by love of the game, which is why stadiums remain such unique theaters of passion, with tales of jail cells, podium invasions, hecklers, Ryder Cup taunts, and personal security alerts forever woven into the mythology of sports fandom. And if people wanted to keep following these wild journeys, they should make sure to subscribe now for more stories straight from the stands.
Everybody is going to be looking at this because of what happened, not just against you guys, but this first week too. Everybody's taking pictures of it. They're saying they're in the neutral zone. They're saying they're false starting because they slow it down to 1,000 frames per second.
Yeah.
What the Eagles need to do this next week is, I would be telling Tyler Steen and Landon Dickerson to make sure you are out of the neutral zone, right? Make sure you're still up on the ball, but make sure your helmets are nowhere near. I'm also kind of tired of it. I'm tired of talking about it.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. I get that there's like a hair of a second early on some of these. Some of them are legitimate false starts. Some of them I feel like fall well within the parameters of any other short yardage play.